All right, thank you so much. Welcome to another episode of the award-winning Sales Game Changers podcast. My name is Fred Diamond. Of course, I'm the president of the Institute for Effective Professional Selling, the IEPS, and I'm very excited. Today is a very special office hours sales professors unplugged podcast. Again, we're interviewing sales professors, program directors at universities that have either a sales major, minor, concentration, certificate, or even a couple of classes. I'm very excited. We post this show, Rhett Epler, every other Thursday. Typically, we interview universities that are associated or not with the University Sales Center Alliance, and we talk about what are you teaching your students who are looking for careers in sales, and how are you working with the companies that are supporting those programs, and then whatever else you'd like to talk about. If you're watching the show on YouTube, thank you so much. Give us a thumbs up. We would greatly appreciate it. Leave a question if you'd like. We'll get to all of your comments. If you're watching or listening, I should say, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, give us a 5-star review. We would greatly appreciate that as well. Once again, all of our past episodes, all of the transcripts and recordings, they could be found at salesgamechangerspodcast.com. salesgamechangerspodcast.com. So I'm very excited. I'm based in Northern Virginia, right outside of Washington, D.C., and we're very fortunate, Rhett Epler, that there are a number of universities in the DMV, specifically in the Commonwealth, that have great programs for selling professionals, and they're helping these young adults launch great careers. You're with Old Dominion
Yep.
University. So tell us a little bit about yourself. Today's show, again, is with Rhett Epler with Old Dominion University. And tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to ODU.
Yeah, thank you, Fred. I appreciate, this. And I think what you're doing is really great because you are advocating for the professionalism of the sales function. So I think we all kind of have the same goal. And I think all of us in the state of Virginia, and really broadly speaking, have the same kind of a goal. So it's really neat to see all this coming together. In terms of myself, I've been here at ODU for, oh my gosh, 4.5 years. I moved here in the summer of 2021. It's been my first job since getting my PhD at the University of Wyoming. And it was during COVID, and, it's a wild story, but I moved out here, sight unseen. The job market was really weird because I was during COVID, and I thought, yeah, that sounds like a cool adventure. So everything was sight unseen, and I moved out here. They did have a sales program, and that was really the biggest reason why I was interested in coming out here, just because that's what I was trained under. That's my professional background. And it's been really great to be here and help it grow and watch it grow. And kind of like you said, seeing students get really great jobs and watching them. I'm now I've been here, for, like I said, 4.5 years. So I'm starting to see students that have been out there for a few years. Or, geez, last week I reconnected with a student for some interviews for a research project. She's now at Johnson and Johnson. So I'm starting to see these students get into these really great careers, and it really is probably the most rewarding thing about the job. Sorry, my dogs are barking at each other. It's really one of the most rewarding things about the job because, to see somebody get into a great career where they are able to it just changes their life. And that, to be even a small part of that, just having them in a class or two or writing a letter for them or anything like that. I think that's probably one of really the most underrated privileges and experiences that this job has to offer. So I'm really excited about what we're doing here at ODU, and I'm sure I'll be able to share more about it. And really, sales in Virginia in general, I think there's a lot of Virginia has really great universities. I mean, there's you can just count both hands. You can count really good universities, and most of them are involved in sales in one way or another. I just connected with somebody from the University of Richmond the other day, so they're getting a sales program, and it's just all these really great schools are now getting into this, and it's really super exciting. So yeah,
Oh,
that's
yeah.
about myself. Yeah,
That's great. So Dr. Epler, I'm kind
yeah.
of, what was your PhD dissertation in?
Yeah, so my dissertation was on how salespeople work in really dynamic and chaotic environments. I was working on this idea, kind of like the entrepreneurial salesperson, because that was my professional background. I'd done real estate, during the 08, 09 crisis. I was in residential and a little bit of commercial real estate. It was atrocious time to be doing it. I somehow managed to do okay during it. And I think it was because I was pretty entrepreneurial. And I also did some stuff in oil and gas. And, oil and gas is obviously very volatile. And when I was working in it, it was 2015, 2016, and that's when oil was down at like $30 a barrel, and it was really dire. I mean, of course, it went negative at one point. That's another story, but it all kind of informed how I was thinking about how salespeople respond to dynamic environments. And that was, I started to look at the entrepreneurship literature, because that's entrepreneurs are kind of mired in chaos all the time. And it was like, there's a lot of overlaps here, and there's just many similarities. So I worked I got it at the University of Wyoming. I studied under Mark Leach, who is
Mhm.
just a phenomenal person. And he's been around sales for a very long time. And he's kind of that generation that really help to, um, you know, reduce a lot of the stigma towards sales. And he's part of that generation who really has done so much to advance this and put us all in the place we're in now. So I'm eternally grateful. So yeah, in a nutshell, I've always been interested in how salespeople respond to really dynamic environments. And I think entrepreneurs play a kind of a key role in understanding that. There's some differences, but I think there's a lot of similarities and overlaps that are pretty interesting.
Yeah, this is definitely, yeah, we're doing today's interview in November of
Yep.
2025. And 2025 was a very challenging year for a
Yeah.
lot with all the transformation as it relates to
Yeah.
technology and government's role and shifting transformation across all industries as we continue to come out at some level from the pandemic. So, as obviously, it's great things that you've learned there. So, for people who don't know, tell us a little more about the curriculum at ODU and some of the classes that you offer.
Yeah, so at ODU, we have got Old Dominion, whatever you want to call it. We've got a sales major and a sales minor, and we have a really interesting selection of classes. We have, obviously intro to professional sales. We have advanced sales. We have an influence and persuasion class, and then we also have that's replacing our sales management course next fall. And we also have negotiations. And ODU is very unique because we have this. We have a school as of right now, to my knowledge, it's the only school of professional sales and negotiation. So it was endowed in 2022 by Dick Thurmond and his wife Pat Jenner. They're very nice people. He was a real estate guy, and he was very successful locally, and he did very well. And obviously he wanted to kind of pass a lot of that on. And I can send you the information. He started, endowed it, but he really wanted to provide negotiation and sales skills to everybody, with a particular focus on women and minorities, because of some experiences he had in real estate and just kind of watching how the world worked. So that's kind of our, I guess, ethos. What is really interesting about us, I think, is our focus on experiential learning. I'll give you a few examples. So last fall, in fact, I'll just tell you the story. A year ago, I started hiring a professional improv comedian to come into classes and start to do some seminars in my classes, and it was really great. And the students really liked it. He's a wonderful person. And he's like, "Why don't you come take a class?" So I was like, "All right, I'll take a class. That's fine," because he teaches this theater too. And I started taking these classes and watching people's communication abilities in like literally 6 weeks go from sometimes not very good at all to uh, almost miraculous transformations. And I started doing all this, and I was watching, and all it was 6 weeks of training in a show, and it was like, this is really crazy what I'm seeing. And him and I kind of hatched a plan over the summer, and um, this last fall, we got done in early October. We had the first instance of that in a sales class where he taught on Tuesdays. It was only for 6 weeks. He taught Tuesdays his improv stuff. And then on Thursdays, I would back up what he was saying with, this is what this means for sales or communications or emotional intelligence, listening, and all the neat stuff you learn in improv. Because there's so many overlaps. And at the end of the 6 weeks, the students all participated in several live improv shows at his theater. And it was really great because they all bonded, and I watched all of them get really confident, and I just am convinced that it's something that can really benefit people in so many ways, help them get jobs. And I mean, you've worked in sales, I've worked in sales, it's kind of nothing but improv a lot of the time. You don't know what's going to happen next, and you always have to be quick on your feet. So I think the sales parallels are there. And that's just one example of what we're doing here. And I think that we have a real focus, and not that other places don't, I'm not saying that, but our ethos is skills and jobs. And I think that's something we really pride ourselves on. I talked earlier about seeing students get jobs, and I truly enjoy doing that, and kind of, you know, advocating for them, or reaching out to somebody and saying, "Hey, here's a really great student," or writing letters for them, or any. I got an email in right before we got on the call, and as I was getting on the call, I was kind of looking up internships for them, and it's just kind of a rewarding thing, helping somebody out, because I've been helped so much. So I would say, yeah, that's what sets us apart. My colleague Aaron Arndt, he teaches the negotiations, and we have a lecturer and we've got some adjuncts and we just have a lot going on. And if you know anything about the area of Norfolk, there's a lot of industry here and there's a lot of huge B2B companies with a presence. So it really is a pretty fruitful area for students if they want to stay here. But a lot of times they want to go back up to Northern Virginia because a lot of them are from there. So that's why I'm so excited to meet you, Fred. So hopefully we can, you have so many good connections up there, and I hope to be able to send students that way and just kind of further this relationship as well. So, oh, you're muted, Fred.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned improv. We had done
Yeah.
a couple of shows with people in the improv world, and
Okay.
I remember about 3 years ago I did a show, and it was a guy who had got his training at Second City,
Okay.
and
Okay.
his one of his tutors was Tina Fey from Saturday
Oh
Night
my
Live.
gosh. Okay. Very
Yeah,
cool.
and he
Very
said
cool.
that this is interesting based on our conversation. He said that Tina's advice to him was stop trying to be funny, and we talk
Yes.
about this a lot in sales. When you try too much to sell,
Yeah.
you throw the customer off, and a lot of the advice is stop selling, be informative, allow the customer to figure things out, listen. We did a survey of the most uttered words in the history of the Sales Game Changers podcast, and listening was
Listen.
right after value, was the number two most important word.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like, I remember he said to me, he said, Tina said, stop trying to be funny. And the same thing in sales is you want to learn the trade, you want to learn to understand the process and punchline, et cetera. But, as you're
Yeah.
out there trying too hard, it just ain't going to work. I'm just kind of curious. How do
Yeah.
students become aware of your program? Do
Yeah.
they know as seniors in high school to come to Old Dominion, or do they wind up and then they see you at a career fair or something? How does the awareness happen?
The path is interesting, and I would like to circle back to the improv because I have one point on
Sure.
that you brought up because I think you'll find humor in this and utility. But I think it's like a lot of things. There's so many good schools in Virginia, and they try to choose where to get in. And I go to any open house I can, and people, even if there's whenever they are, because I just want to get in front of students and say, look, this is like my value proposition. This is what I think I can do, and this is what you pick the best school for you. Obviously, this is not a high pressure sale by any means. I mean, do what's best for you. But I think just a lot of that, to me, it's a lot of that personal connection and just getting in front of students. And then, word of mouth is starting to spread, I think, because we're doing such innovative and novel stuff here. And I will say, I do want to give a big shout out to my department and really my college because I have a lot of these kind of like crazy plans sometimes, and they usually are like, "Yeah, that's a good idea. You should try it out." So it's kind of a culture of innovation, and it's really nice to be able to share that with students and say, "This is how we're innovating, and here's what we've done. Here's some evidence of it." And I have found great support in doing many of these things. I got like the improv thing. I was so ready. I had this big thing written up. I had all these citations in there, and I was like, here's what it's going to cost. And they were just like, yeah, that sounds great. Like, how can we help you? I mean, it wasn't even, I really went in there prepared for like, something that was going to be, this huge, ordeal. And it was like, it was pretty much yeah, that's a really good idea. We think you should do that. That sounds really fun. So,
Yeah.
so
That's
yeah,
great. So tell
I
us a
hope
bit
that
about,
answers your
yeah,
question. There's like a magic to some of this stuff with students because they go where they want to go, but then they have siblings or they hear from people, and it does take time for you have to be around a place for a while for people to maybe learn your name or something like that. But I think people are starting, and the local newspaper, The Pilot, just wrote a story about my usage of AI in the classroom last week, and I was really thrilled to see that because we're pretty use a lot of AI in the classroom, and I pair AI role playing technology with sales competitions and things like that, so you can kind of get the practice and then put it into fruition, if you will, to kind of see what a sales interaction or call looks like. So that's another thing they've been supportive of, and we have a lot of really good corporate partners that help with all. So,
do you find out that your students want most? What are the main things that they're curious about or interested
good
about as they
question.
embark upon this career?
Yeah, I think they first the I didn't come up with this, somebody else did, but they said their intro to sales class is kind of like the change your mind class because people go in there and a lot of students, if they don't have a family member that works in sales or something, which a lot of times they don't, I find they come into the sales classes almost kind of reserved or in a way where they're kind of skeptical, and it's like no, like professional salespeople are value creators. I mean, there's nothing unethical about any of it. I mean, you can't be in the B2B world and pulling scams on it. Just doesn't really work that way. It's like people are very sophisticated, and we talked about. I think I think they're curious about sales, and I also find that they really want to learn how to communicate, and they want a job. I mean, that's why it's like we've kind of figured that out, and it's like they want communication skills, they want to learn about sales, and at the end, they want a job. And I think that's something that is it's fairly simple, I think, in many ways. So that's what I believe our role is kind of the state and then the end goal they want.
One of the great things about the programs at places like Old Dominion University, and you mentioned a lot of the other schools in Virginia and
Oh
in
yeah,
the DMV, the DM, is that you have relationships with corporate sponsors,
yeah,
and these are companies that are looking to hire great talent. And I heard someone say recently that if they hire a young adult from one of a program like yours,
yeah,
the young adult is getting like a 3, 4 year head start,
yeah,
because they understand the skills and they have to learn the
yeah,
products and the markets. But for the most part, these companies love to be associated. And more of this is happening because we are producing young adults that understand that this is a profession, professional selling.
yeah,
I run the Institute for Effective
yeah.
Professional Selling. Talk about, and you're also right. Virginia is, for people who don't know, it is a great business state. It's
Oh my gosh,
all
yeah,
through the Tidewater area, the Northern Virginia
yeah,
area, Hampton Roads, I guess,
yeah,
whatever you might be calling it.
yeah.
All through Richmond. It really
Oh
is
my
such an
gosh,
illustrious state for so much.
yeah.
Talk about your relationship with corporate sponsors and how much they know about what you do and what do they expect?
Yeah, we have tons of good relationships. I mean, these are some of the biggest companies in the world. United Rentals, and all. These are all. I tell students, I always say these are big, serious companies that want to come in here and hire y'all because they have a lot of brands that work for them. And, they just come in knowing that they're gonna have students that have got some real life experience. And I do want to give a shout out to the rest of the state of Virginia because I mean, you can go to Tech, you can go to JMU, you can go to VCU. I can just rattle these schools off, and I suppose they're peer schools in a way, but I don't really look at it in that kind of a way because we're all kind of in this together, in my opinion. And it's like I said, you could just like randomly pick a city in Virginia, and it's like there's a really great sales program there. I know the people there. Like I think the students there are getting a fantastic job, and companies are realizing this too because if you look at the partnership list with all these schools it's like the same companies that are like the companies involved with tech are the same ones involved with us so they understand that we're all students are getting a good education here and they're really happy to hire them and then go put them into these roles and sales is something where you can have if you're a college student and you want a reasonable path to six figures within probably 3 or 4 years. I mean it's imminently doable. I mean, it's almost expected at this point that this is could be really a game changer for you socioeconomically. So they come here knowing these students are going to be able to go there and perform, and that's why they're such good sponsors. And they partner stuff, and they'll pay for events, and they'll travel, and then we're doing site visits. We're starting to roll some of that out, and we're going to do in the fall, or I'm sorry, in the upcoming spring. I'm working on something now, doing some paid job shadowing, where we're going to pay students to go out and shadow with a few companies so they can just kind of see what this is really like. And I think that's our role as educators is to expose them to that and teach them the skills.
Yeah, that is great.
So
I'm just kind of
yeah,
curious. Again, you're working with a lot of these young
yeah,
adults, preparing them. Uh, what are your when you view these students,
yeah,
the ones that are really going to excel, what are some of the things that you see in them? For example, I've judged at a couple of
yeah,
competitions recently, and the thing that blows me away is all of these young adults who are part of these programs, they're all talented.
yeah,
They're from the least to the top. But then as you go up in the competition, you see some things kind of come through in some of the ones who might be a little more elite. I'm just kind of curious, what do you see working with a lot of these young adults that some of the elite ones have? What are some of the drivers, characteristics that you
yeah.
see in them?
Yeah, that's such a good point because there are so many. You're right. I'm actually quite optimistic on the future because I deal with a lot of the future leaders. I will just say that, and I think they're really smart and quite a bit further along than I was at that age. We'll just leave it at that. But with that said, I think the things that I'm seeing that really sets the top students apart is that they are super engaged with everything on campus. I mean, a lot like we just had a sales competition and our winning team. It was absolutely great competition. The winning team had two student athletes on it, and they're just two girls that practice all the time. They get the benefits of practice, and they were so competitive. And they were like, "We're going to win this. Like, what do we need to do to win this?" That was their question. It was like they weren't cocky at all, but they're like, they asked me like, "What do we need to do to win this?" I'm like, "You need to practice. That's really what it's going to come down to. Is like you have to show up and have a good day, obviously, but you need to." And they're like, "We will do just that." So I would say students that are in clubs that do sports, it's almost like you can look at their resume and you can see what they're doing, and it's like this student kind of gets it that they need to be doing clubs, they need to be really actively involved in many places, and some of that other stuff where they're just if they're quick on their feet or if they're good listeners, they're going to do well. But there's like little intangible things to me that indicate drive, and that's just somebody who's really plugged into life in many ways. And I see you see that a lot with students that are just really top performers. It's like they're just kind of excelling at everything they do, and they're involved and they're engaged and they're just really active all over campus. I would say that's something that I've noticed over the years.
That's a great answer. I mean,
Yeah,
it's one of the other keywords that has come up innumerable in the over 800 episodes we've done of the Sales Game Changers podcast is preparation, right?
yeah,
And I want to talk about that as it relates
yeah,
to some of the trends shaping the curriculum.
yeah.
Dr. Rhett Epler, we haven't mentioned AI yet, and we're 20 some odd minutes into the
I
show.
know, I know.
We talk a lot about the trends of professional
Yeah.
selling, with the shift in customer engagement because of the rise in digital information being accessible to them. Uh, what are some of the trends you're seeing in your sales curriculum? How has your teaching and those of your associates shifted due to that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with the incursion of AI, we've been able to adopt some technology because of our program is set up to where we can, really leverage some of these tools, and we have companies that are willing to kind of help us out with that and things of that nature. But I would say there's been a real push to get understanding this and getting on top of it and leveraging it. And I would say I can only speak for myself, but I do know a little bit about my colleagues' curriculum, and everything is pretty much experiential now because we've kind of realized that students are using AI in ways that may not be the best. And I'm not really interested in reading a 5-page AI type paper. So there's ways around, like you can do in-person testing with pen and paper, and I would actually advocate for that. I know people doing that, but I would say it's pushed nearly everything I do to just being experiential.
Hmm.
And like we just had my final exam, if you will, was a sales competition with Enterprise, and I make all students participate, because if I don't, then like you said earlier, the 4 or 5 students that are really plugged in are the ones that you get 4 or 5 students that do it, but instead we get 40 or 50, and they get to see what a sales call is like. So I have learned that over time that with students, it's like, I can pull levers as a professor, and it's like, no, this is your assignment right here. Here's what we're gonna do, and here's why we're gonna do it, and here's what you're gonna benefit from. And if you can get them to buy into it and just explain like this is really going to be beneficial, and explain to them like why we're doing this, I think that's what I've kind of learned over the years. And I just encourage sales professors or practitioners watching this, just we're doing a lot of really good things in the sales classrooms. And that's why you do this, Fred, because I think that college is getting so much pushback and critique right now, and some of that is without a doubt warranted. But I will stand up for sales and saying like, hey, we're over here, like the salespeople are over here, like we're doing all this really cool stuff. It's experiential. These students are learning a lot. They're getting really good jobs. It's really super exciting to be involved in it. So in general, there's just this push towards everything experiential. It's sales. We're all salespeople,
Yeah.
former, or most of us are. So we kind of have that mentality of like we're going to try stuff, and we're going to work together, and we're going to figure it out.
Yeah, I mean I love that experiential because
Yeah,
sales happens in front of customers. It happens in the field, it happens with
yeah,
partners,
yeah,
and the ones who are successful. I love the way you said, your two young ladies wanted to win. So what do I got to take to win? In sales, it's about service, of course, but it's about winning.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
about winning the hearts
yeah,
of the customer. It's about
yeah,
winning their confidence that what you're bringing to the market is going to help them achieve their goals. It's
yeah,
not about you selling your stuff. It's about helping your customers achieve their goals. We
yeah.
talked today with Dr. Rhett Epler from ODU, Old Dominion University. Anything else you want to share? Anything else you want to bring up that we might not have covered that you want to make sure you get across?
Yeah, I mean, I wanted to bring this up about the improv because there's
Mhm.
some rules to improv that I think we're so when because when the guy was teaching it, he's like, how are you gonna translate this into sales? I'm like, this is so easy because one of the rules of improv is you don't talk about you use props if you're up there, but you don't talk about props, right? And it's the same with sales. I mean, you don't want to talk features, you want to talk benefits. So it was just kind of like all of that stuff within character work is nothing more than adapting to somebody's communication style and kind of their persona, if you will. So it was just so fun to do that and to explain to students and just to say like, hey, and to me, it was like, it's the idea is just like, look at the world around you and there's so many things to learn from. And if you can leverage this stuff, you can do really neat things. And I do communicate that to the students too. And it's like, I'm just a guy that tries stuff. And I want you all to have this mentality too, to where you get out in the world and don't be afraid to try things. If something works, that's great. If it doesn't work, that's also great because you learn from it. You can, if you just have that kind of mindset all the time, like I'm going to learn from this, then it will be okay. So that was the one little thing on improv. And, you know, I guess the other thing I touched upon the just kind of the sales community in Virginia, but I really will just say it really is fantastic. I know you had talked to me, Fred, about we're going to do this Virginia State sales competition at ODU this spring. We're still, our sponsor, we had to kind of pivot on a sponsor. So we're finding a new one right now. And it's just like you approached me about judging there. And I would just say that's the mentality in Virginia is like, how can we help out? And what can we do to benefit each other? And I would say that's so rewarding that people are just here to help out. And we have that mentality too. So it's really, there's so many good things going on. Really, really proud to be a part of it.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought up the improv when we went down. I want to
Yeah.
talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah.
Is people say when they think about creative jobs, they think about marketing and
Yeah.
graphics and design. The reality is sales professionals have to be quick on their feet. It would be nice to have a script, and we all try to work on that so that
Yeah.
there gets to be a rhythm, and you make sure you communicate. But sometimes the customer says, "I only have 5 minutes." Oh, well, I had a 20-minute script prepared. Okay, you have 5 minutes. So you need to figure out, how do I get to the core by asking the right questions and maybe
Yeah.
shifting along the way, trying to think quick on your feet. The customer throws a curveball all the time, like, well, we love what you're doing, but we don't have budget.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, how do I show more value, and how do I help them? I have an expression. I've worked at large technology companies. I used to have an
Yeah.
expression: I may not have budget, but I have money. So, I've worked at billion-dollar companies, and I've been told, hey, your budget's been cut. Okay, well, we're a $10 billion company. I'm sure there's 50,000 bucks sitting in a account somewhere that we can use, but how do you be creative? How do you be, as you're
Yeah.
always thinking about where the customer needs to go, right?
Yes.
And those are definitely, I love that you brought this up. They're definitely skills that easily can be transferred into professional selling.
I totally think so. And that's what I had to tell. And they really picked it up quicker. They picked it up very quick. And I'm like, look, guys, this is all, we're having fun up here, but really you're going to take these lessons with you. And I had students after that say, look, I had to give a presentation and it was nothing because last week I got in front of a stage in front of 100 people, 100. I mean, we're in a theater, it's a 100-person theater. And they got up and they did improv for 45. There were multiple teams and they were up there for 45 minutes apiece. So yeah, to your point, it's like a mindset of just like, I will figure this out. There's a way
Yeah.
out of this. And you bring up, yeah, I'll find the money somewhere within the organization. I'll be a good team player. I will find somebody that will help me out. We'll get this done. And I really want them to take that attitude with them, and they will absolutely go and be sales executives someday and just have wonderful careers because of that. I'm really convinced of that. So,
All right. Well, Dr. Rhett Epler, thank you so
yeah,
much for being on today's Office Hours
thank
Sales
you.
Professors Unplugged. It's great to learn more about what's happening. I look forward to helping you with your program
Yeah,
in the spring that we're going to be judging. And
yeah,
good for you for, one of the great things about this Office Hours Sales Professors Unplugged is I'm talking to people who are setting young adults off on a career. And like we kind of said, we view sales, it's a profession. Our
yeah,
mission at the Institute for Effective Professional Selling is to help companies B2B or B2G um, engage their teams and their customers more effectively, elevate their sales leaders, and empower success.
yeah.
So what you guys are doing is very much in sync, and glad to have you on today's show.
Thank you, Fred, so much. I really appreciate your time, and it's always nice talking with you. And I really am a fan of what you're doing. So thank you for letting me play a part in it.
You're welcome. Once again, my name is Fred
Yep.
Diamond. This is the Office Hours Sales Professors Unplugged, the Sales Game Changers podcast.